我的呀，这个东西
你叠了
啊，但是人数没有记录。
啊？那刚好在听说看。
Okay, everybody, let's get started. So where we left off today is we wanted to answer two questions. Question number one. Oops. Okay. Sorry, every time someone appears, I Okay. Question number one. Well, let's actually back up a little. We're talking today in the past, we considered point attractors. Okay, so these were fixed points of the dynamics, and each fixed point would correspond to, say, some memory. And so now, line attractors and higher dimensional attractors. And as we'll see, put a question mark there, these are a lot of instead of point attractors, we might want so line attractors. It's basically an activity space. They look like this, and if you start nearby, you'll end up on the line attractor. And just like we can have multiple point attractors, we might ask, can we have multiple line attractors? So you have a line attractor here, so this is high dimensional. Another line attractor here. Another one here, and so on. Okay. So in fact, so the question is, and there are two questions we want to answer today. So question number one, can we have multiple line attractors? And the answer to that is going to be sort of. So strictly speaking, no, you can't have multiple line attractors, or it's very, very difficult. But you can get approximate line attractors. I'll say what that means. And the other question we want to ask is, can external input move move the trajectory. Well, actually, let's rephrase that a little better. Can external input cause movement along the line attractor? Along the line attractor. Okay, and that's pretty important. The line attractor. So the line attractor corresponds to something, some memory. Let's say the position of your head. And you might want to update the position of your head without any external input. So if you close your eyes and move your head, I mean, there is some input. If you open your eyes, of course, you can look around and you can know where you know the position of your head. But with your eyes closed, all you have are internal signals telling you you've moved your muscles or some acceleration. And you would like to be able to update the position of your head just by modifying the activity of modifying where you're on the line attractor. So this is actually pretty important, and the answer is yes. But it's not that easy. Okay. Okay, so those are the two questions we want to answer today. After that, we'll be pretty much done with line attractors, and we'll go on to other recurrent structures. Okay, so question number one. So first of all, let's review. One line attractor looks like this. So nu I equals phi of sum on j of wi minus j, nu j, where wi minus j is symmetric. Wi minus j equals wj minus I. Okay, so symmetric translation invariant matrix. And then we saw if nu 0 I is a solution, then nu 0 comma I plus k is also a solution. So strictly speaking, what we've showed is not really we have a line attractor, but we have lots and lots of point attractors. It turns out you can make it a continuous line attractor, but if you have a million fixed points, that's pretty much the same as a line attractor. So if you have lots of neurons, these are sort of one and the same. And the picture we have for the neural activity, so this is nu 0 I versus I. So the picture we have, remember, something like this. So this is index I on this axis. And so one, depending on so what the idea is, this kind of like that, you get sort of some hill of activity. And this is actually observed in the brain. These so-called head direction cells that tell you where your head is, if you actually record from a population of neurons, some are firing at high rate, some are firing at low rate. And the peak, sort of the peak value tells you more or less the angle. So this I, in the case of head direction cells, so for head direction cells, oops. So for head direction cells, So I corresponds to angle. To angle. So this might be 0 degrees, 360 degrees. And so if your neurons peaked here, that means, oh, you're sort of pointing at about 180 degrees. On the other hand, another solution to this line attractor equations is they could be over here. They could be shifted. So, oops. I keep forgetting. So instead of having here, they're basically something like this. So whereas this would correspond to, this point would correspond to 180 degrees, this point would correspond to maybe, I don't know, 220 degrees, okay? So by looking at the activity of these neurons, your brain can figure out which direction your head is pointing, okay? So that's sort of a single line attractor. Now, we've seen, at least in the case of point attractors, how to embed multiple point attractors, and we can try the same idea. Okay, so so here's our guess for multiple line attractors. Question? Let's see a chat. If there's a question, let me know. Basically, we want to write down equations like this. So nu I equals phi of the sum on j of w I minus j mu nu j. And sum on mu is a point. So j, we have n neurons, and we have p, in this case, multiple line attractors, so this is p line attractors. Okay, and these weights wi, j, mu are chosen so that if each of these are chosen to be a line attractor, wi 0 I mu. Actually, I'm going to put a equals phi of the sum j equals 1 to n wi minus j mu nu j mu. Okay, and the different, so basically different mu's, we can think of different mu's or different permutations. So one way to do this, different mu are different permutations. So there are lots of ways to do this, permutations of the indices. Okay, so basically they just scramble the line attractor. But it doesn't really matter. As long as you have lots of different weight matrices, each one of which corresponds to a different line attractor, and we'll say the W different mu's are uncorrelated, that's kind of all we need. So what we want to know is, does this actually work? And this is where the sort of comes in. Okay. So the question is, does this work? So work means, does this give multiple line attractors? And we can use it, the signal to noise analysis we used before. So we're just going to write nu 0I. Shoot, I'm using nu for rate. So before we use sigma rho, so, I'll use, what should I use? Alpha equals phi of the sum on J W, and we're going to put a question mark here. Okay, W I minus J alpha nu 0 J alpha plus the sum mu not equal to alpha, the sum on J W 0, oops, W I minus J mu nu 0 J alpha. Okay. And so, I mean, you know, these aren't going to be exactly equal to, but maybe they can be approximately equal to. So that's actually, so exactly equal to is way too long, but if it's close, that might be good enough. Okay, we're going to put approximately equal to, and we're going to put a question mark because we don't really know if this is going to hold. So what we're going to do as before, we're going to treat this as sort of random noise. Not really noise, we just kind of call it noise. The key is the randomness. And so there are, so if these things, we'll take, for simplicity, so assume, what's wrong with the pen? Something is up, I put in my pen. Okay. So assume Wi minus J mu is 0 mean. Okay, so assume Wij mu is 0 mean, and then so the usual assumption we had in before, and 0 nu 0 J alpha uncorrelated with a Wi minus J. Okay. So that means in this sum here, we have P minus 1 times n terms, and they're all independent. Okay. So what that means is, this sum the size of it is P minus 1 times n times the average value of W squared times the average value of nu squared. Okay. And then, of course, it's the square root of all that. That's a typical size of this sum. And the weights actually better scale as 1 over n as before, right? Because the reason they have to scale as 1 over n is because nu 0 alpha is highly correlated with these weights. So if you have n terms in that sum, each term better be order 1 over n. Otherwise, that will blow up. Okay. And so this quantity here then is basically that scales as square root of, as before, P minus 1 over n. And so that equals, and so in the large n limit, if we don't have too many, try to embed too many memories, this is small. Okay, so we use this usual method for trying to embed memories. The weights are kind of small, order 1 over n. And that's needed so this term doesn't blow up. What's up with my pen? Shoot. Sorry, dang, my pen just stopped working. Uh-oh. That is very bad. Okay, just give me a second to fix this. Okay, this has happened before. Bluetooth is on, paired. Everything should be working. Uh-oh. I'm very sorry about this. I do not know what's going on. May have to switch devices. Okay. Let's see if it's. Okay. Would be a battery issue. Okay, let me take a 3-minute break and try to get a new battery. If it's not the battery, I do not. We'll have to switch devices, which is not good. Okay, I'm very sorry about this. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so that didn't work. I'm going to have to switch devices. Chat. Switch devices, stop share. So it's not ideal, but it should work okay. Let's see. This works.
Recording in progress.
Yeah.
检查一下自己的麦，看一下都关了没。
Okay, good. Okay. You can hear me? Hope so. Let's see if I
Yes, we can, Professor.
Okay, good. So we'll switch gears using, thank God I have another device. I don't know if it's what happened. Share content. Okay, it's not as good a whiteboard, but it should work okay. And it should still be recording, good. So when all is said and done, what we have is new 0I alpha equals phi of, and again, approximately equal to, with a question mark there, phi of the sum on J of W I minus J alpha, new 0 J alpha, plus squiggle I. And this is noise. There's a random variable, meaning it's zero mean, and variance is really, it's sort of approximately equal to p minus 1 over n equals small. So you have lots of neurons, and relative to the number of line attractor trying to embed, that shouldn't be a big number. And the question is, so what do we expect this to have? What would be the best news of that could happen? Okay, so the best news is the best possible thing that can happen does it follow? So we'll start out, let's say that the red curve is our original line attractor. So this is new 0I alpha. Actually, it's new 0. So this is our original line attractor. You know, different points, different values. You can, any point along this attractor is stable. So what we're hoping to happen is when we add noise, the line attractor just moves a little bit. So the best possible thing that can happen is line attractor moves a little bit. Okay. It turns out that that doesn't quite happen. So it does move, but it's not a line attractor anymore. And the thing is, so line attractors are actually structurally unstable objects. So the thing about being, if you want to be zero, everywhere along this line attractor, in some sense, you're trying to write some function of theta is actually strictly zero. When you move off the line attractor, what happens is you're still attracted. So you're still attracted onto this loop curve, but there's also some drift. There's slow drift. Okay. And that's because, like I said, line attractors are structurally unstable. And there are two ways to see this. So first, I'm going to give you the intuition. Then I'm going to give you a slightly more mathematical version. So this is, I'm going to actually, so this is nu 0 I alpha. I'm going to actually, so this is a bunch of points. I'm going to actually draw it as a curve. So basically, it's because, you know, think of it as this is a bunch of points, but I'm actually drawing as a curve just so it's easier. And so what we have is along this curve, so nu 0 I alpha is equal to phi of the sum on j of w I minus j nu 0 j alpha. Okay.
Does schools have one? I think so. Yeah. Yeah, we'll just have white packing.
Okay. Thanks, Barry. But we also have, so this is, I mean, this holds, right? But what about when we add in, so remember, we're going to add in noise. This is phi of the sum on j of w I minus j nu 0 j alpha. And then we're going to actually also have plus squiggle I. Okay. So what does this plus squiggle I term do? It basically modifies this phi, and it makes it, so along this curve, nu I and phi are exactly balanced. Okay. Once you add the squiggle I, what happens is that basically there's a little, you want to shift a little bit upward. Here, a little bit downward here, a little bit upward here. And you're counting on all these upward and downward arrows exactly canceling. Okay. Because if you have sort of a net, if it's net upward on this side, if these things are net upward, the curve moves to the right. Okay. So let's write this. So net upward arrows. So net upward arrows cause shift to the right. Okay. So that's the main idea. It'd be nice to put some mathematical teeth into that. And so what we can do is we can say, okay, let's go to next to the, well, we can do it here. So we have nu, I'm going to use a vector. So nu alpha So we'll have nu alpha equals nu 0 alpha plus delta nu. Okay. And what we want is that nu 0 alpha plus delta nu equals phi of w dot nu 0 alpha plus delta nu plus squiggle. If this holds, we have a line attractor. Okay. And so what we're going to do as usual is Taylor expand. So this thing is approximately equal to, and this is going to be a good approximation if the noise is small, phi prime of w dot nu 0 alpha. Sorry. So phi, that's our unperturbed solution, plus phi prime evaluated at w dot nu 0 alpha. And then I'll use this quantity here, w at nu 0 alpha, let's squiggle. Okay. And this quantity here, actually, I'm going to go to the next page. Probably should have started there in the first place. So nu 0 alpha plus delta nu. The limit of small noise is approximately equal to phi of nu 0 alpha. Oops. Of w dot nu 0 alpha plus first order Taylor expansion phi prime of w dot nu 0 alpha, and this strange symbol w dot delta nu plus squiggle. Okay, and what this means is in components, so the ith component of this is phi prime of the sum on j of w I minus j nu 0, oops, alpha. Zero alpha j times the sum on k of w I minus k. This is an alpha here. Delta nu k plus squiggle I. Okay. So this quantity here is actually a vector. And the ith component is this quantity here. So this depends on I. Okay, so it's just shorthand notation for that. And as usual, these two things cancel because by definition, that's original line attractor. And then what we get is, I'm going to actually go back to components. So delta nu I minus phi prime, and just say phi I prime, the sum on j of w I minus j, delta nu j equals phi I prime times squiggle I. And phi I prime is just phi prime evaluated, oops, there's an alpha here. Evaluated the sum on j J of W I minus J alpha nu 0 J alpha. Okay, so that's what phi prime is. And so there's actually, so the problem, and so if we can solve this equation, right, this is a standard linear equation, right? We can think of this as, this is the same as Jij, sum on J of Jij delta nu J equals phi I prime squiggle I, where Jij equals delta ij. So this is 1 if I equals J and 0 if I not equal to J minus phi I prime W I minus J alpha. Okay, so all we have to do is invert this matrix. The problem is, because, so this is a completely non-trivial and important points. Because we're on a line attractor, and this point is going to come up again. So Jij is not invertible. Okay. So normally we would just write this as delta nu J and delta nu I equals the sum on J of J inverse Ij squiggle J, oops, phi J prime squiggle J, okay. And if that were true, then we'd have a nice line attractor. We'd be in a situation like this, where this blue curve is actually a line attractor. But the problem is, because we're on a line attractor, Jij is not invertible. Okay. And that's actually not that hard to see. If you spend weeks thinking about it. Remember, we have nu 0 I of alpha of theta equals, by definition, phi of the sum on J of W I minus J alpha nu 0 J alpha. This is a function of theta. It's a line attractor, right? So let's take d theta at both sides. So we have d theta of nu 0 I alpha. So first of all, of theta, okay, equals, to use a chain rule, phi I prime. Remember, phi I prime is just a derivative evaluated at this point. Phi I prime times W I minus J alpha d theta of nu 0 I alpha of theta. Okay. So this quantity here, we're just going to give it a name of V0I. That's a really bad name. U0I. So what we see is U0I equals phi I prime, the sum on J of W I minus J alpha U0 J, which we can write U0I minus the sum on J of phi I prime W I minus J alpha U0 J equals 0, which is the same as the sum on J of Jij U0 J equals 0. So U0 J is an eigenvector of Jij with eigenvalue 0. Okay, So that means J is not invertible. So if you go back to remember, it's our definition of Jij, right? It's just exactly this. And so there's sort of the fact that you're on a line attractor means when you try to move that line attractor, it's not a line attractor anymore. Okay. And this is sort of a generic key feature of line attractors. They're structurally unstable. So when we try to embed multiple line attractors, every one of them becomes no longer perfect line attractor. Okay, so if we're in, I'll just draw two. There's line attractor number one, line attractor number two. Okay, and after perturbing these line attractors, if you try to basically build a network with both of these line attractors, they move by a little bit. They move to these dashed lines, say, that's that one, and that's that one. And there's some slow drift along both of them, okay? So in both cases, there's some slow drift. So they know the dashed line, the dotted lines are no longer true line attractors, and they typically have fixed points somewhere, although they don't have to. You could just continually drift along the line attractor, okay? So the answer to the question, can you embed multiple line attractors, is no, at least not with a standard formulation. You might be able to think about learning these things, suggesting all the weights, giving multiple line attractors. It's not that easy. But by the way, the drift is relatively slow, so it may not matter. Okay, and in fact, I don't know, eventually you'll probably learn about hippocampal place cells. So if you look in hippocampus, so I'll say this last thing and then we'll take a break. So hippocampus, which is a very small area right in the middle of your brain. Probably it's the most studied area in the brain per unit pound or dollar or whatever. And it has place cells. So if you put a mouse in some environment and you record from these place cells, what you'll see is a particular place cell, it fires, so it's active when the animal is in one place. So place cell is actually a very bad name because if you change the environment, so change the environment, and suddenly the place cell, I mean, it doesn't even make sense. So the place cell moves around. Same place cell will be some other place. Okay, and you can even, change what's on the wall. You can actually do experiments where you put things on the wall, you put something else on the wall, and the place cell moves around. So you can change the environment by change what's on the walls. So it looks like a different environment to the animal, and the place cell is going to move around. Okay. And so what's happening, so these place cells can be modeled as a 2D attractor. So I drew that the other day, but instead of lines, there's some 2D manifold. So each point on that manifold corresponds to a point in space. And then this is called, when you go from here, it's called remapping. Okay. And you can imagine what's happening is a scheme like the next page, a scheme like this. Okay, each of these WIJs is an attractor for different environments. And what we know from our analysis is, yes, you can do that, but it's going to cause in every environment a slow drift. But it's still a possibility. If the drift is slow enough, it's only going to matter when the animal's in pitch dark. And in pitch dark, animals tend to either go to the walls, they feel things. And in fact, in the pitch dark, humans anyway are very bad at figuring out where they are. And I doubt if rats are much better. If you ever try to walk around in a really dark room, it is hard. It's really, really easy to get lost. So the question, although technically you can't have multiple line attractors or multiple 2D attractors, in practice, the drift is slow enough so they might be okay. Okay, so let's stop here and take a break. In what I'm going to do in the next session is, so next half of the lecture is question 2. Can input cause movement along the line attractor? And the answer then is going to depend heavily on the zero eigenvalue that we saw earlier. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break. Feel free to ask any questions. And we'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, it's not a battery problem. Okay, let's start up again. And so when we're talking about movement along a line attractor, we need some dynamics. So we used to have, so our equation used to be nu I equals phi of the sum on j w I minus j nu j. Okay. I'm going to add in plus hi. This is external input. And we want to ask if the external input can move our attractor. So we need tau dt here. Minus nu I. So this equation has the same fixed point, and it makes sense, right? If the input is too big, so if the input here is, oops, the input here is too big, the firing rate goes up, and if it's too small, the firing rate goes down relative to its equilibrium. Okay, and the question is, and so the question we want to ask is, can we find? So this question here is the same as, can we find an input hi that moves us along that line attractor? Actually, causes movement along the line attractor. So same question, but phrased sort of mathematically. So I'm going to give the intuition first, and then I won't work out the mathematical details. They're actually on the website. I'll tell you in a second. But here's the intuition. So the intuition looks something like this. So here's our line attractor. Here's nu 0 I. And again, we're just going to draw it as a curve. But there should be a bunch of points. And then remember, so this quantity here, so d nu I dt tau equals phi of minus nu I, right? So phi of its arguments. And so what we're going to do is we're going to, remember phi, we're going to increase it by change it by hi, okay? And hi was, presumably it's going to be a smooth function of I. So if we draw hi, if hi is positive, that increases, so that causes the firing rate to go up. If hi is negative, it causes it to go down. So if we draw hi here, we can sort of draw hi, right? In fact, we can draw the effect of hi on the curve. And what we want, so what would be really nice is if hi, so the red curve is going to be the effect of hi. So this is desired hi. Okay, think of the hi as this distance here. So this is more or less hi. The bigger hi, the bigger that distance is. And what does that do, right? That causes drift to the right, okay? Because what happens is these firing rates increase and these decrease, and that's equivalent of shifting the peak over, okay? So the answer is, can we find an input that causes movement along the line attractor? The answer is yes, if hi depends on position on the line attractor. Okay, so if you think of what HI really looks like, so we plot down here, if we plot HI, it looks like this. Something like this, okay. And if you shift it, so if this black curve, if you shifted this black curve over, if the black curve instead of there, if you started your line attractor, actually I'll do it in blue. I'll do it in black. So if the line attractor instead of been there, had been over here, in that case, desired HI would have shifted. So then you would have needed a shift at HI that looked like this. Oops. It's not a good HI. So the HI would have gone like this. It would have peaked over here. And then presumably it would have gone up. Okay. So this is the HI. So the red curve is the HI corresponding to this position on line attractor, and the dashed line is corresponding to this. Okay. So if your input to your sort of network of neurons knows where the line attractor is, it can switch it. And that's possible to do, but it's not so convenient, right? What you sort of would like if a network of neurons is apply some input, and that input automatically moves causes the movement along the line attractor. So this is a solution, but it's not very elegant. It's also kind of complicated, right? So the input is going to have to get input effectively from this network. So it turns out there's a much more elegant solution, and don't know if this is what the brain does, but it kind of makes sense. So we're going to write tau d nu I dt equals phi of sum on j of w I minus j j plus some prefactor, which I'll call epsilon, times the sum on j of, let's give it a name. I'll call it j. Actually, let's not use j. We used that recently. Just some matrix A, I minus j, nu j, where A, I minus j, is asymmetric, equals minus A j minus I. Okay. And what is this term? So remember, so epsilon, we're going to consider this small. Okay, we have to do minus nu I. These. So epsilon is small. What that means is we haven't moved the line attractor very much. Okay. And so our picture here. So again, here's our line attractor. This is nu I. I'll say nu 0 I. It looks like this. And the effect of AI minus j on any particular activity is the following. So this is actually a convolution. Okay, so if we're gonna, what we're gonna do is we're gonna plot down here, we're gonna plot, so AI minus j versus I minus j. So it's an odd function, and we'll say it goes like, we'll give it this shape. So this is 0. So it's got to be 0 at 0 because it's odd. And there's a shape like that. Okay. So when sum on j of I minus j nu j is basically, so if, how do we want to draw this? So if this is operating on, let's say, we're going to plot on this plot here, I'm going to plot what new J looks like. So first of all, so what we want to know are the properties of this sum. Okay, I'm going to consider a really simple case where, and we're going to choose these things. So this is absolutely anti-symmetric. So that was this term here. It's absolutely anti-symmetric. So suppose that new J were constant. So new J equals constant. Okay. So doesn't really matter either way. The way we picture AI minus, the way we picture this sum here, sum on J of AI minus J, is basically it's this blue curve multiplied by the green curve. Okay. So A0, this is multiplied by new J here. J shifts over a little bit, multiplied by a different value. As you can see, what happens is over here we get positive. So we get, positive on this side, negative on this side, and they exactly cancel because of the anti-symmetry, right? New J minus I on this side, or this side is exactly minus that side. So if new J equals a constant, this sum has no effect whatsoever. Okay, now let's take new J increasing. We use black. I'll do it down here. So new J increasing, you can kind of guess what's going to happen, right? So this is new J increasing. Okay. And now this sum is, it's positive on this side. To put it like line here. So it's more positive. Right? Because this is bigger and sort of less negative. Okay. So Aij increasing, where the slope of new J is increasing, this sum tends to be positive. So basically we can say, for this particular curve, for this, and Aij is really going to be either like that or like that. There aren't that many options for smooth curves, right? For this shape of Aij, of Ai minus J, okay, so the sum on J of Ai minus J new J is, so this is positive if slope of new J is increasing. So it's basically positive for positive slope, and it's negative otherwise. Okay, so this is sort of the key observation, which we can just get from this intuition. And what that means is, in this case, so what that means is, for negative slope, it's negative. So what happens is over here, these neurons, this is pulled down and this is pulled up. Okay, and that corresponds to drift to the left. Drift to the left, and speed is determined by determined by epsilon. Okay, so the larger epsilon is, more rapidly shifts to the left, and so negative epsilon, if epsilon is less than 0, implies drift to the right. Okay, so this is a super elegant solution to this problem. So what you can do is you can build a network. It's elegant, but it's not completely easy to implement in the brain. So basically, you have a bunch of neurons in a ring. Well, right, I mean, they don't actually have to be in a ring. I just draw them a ring. It's easier. And you have two connectivity patterns. One is this W connectivity pattern. So this is W, this corresponds to W. This is Wi minus J. Okay. And this is, remember, is symmetric. And what this tells you is the connection strength between this neuron and this neuron is large if they're close, and then it gets smaller and smaller as they move away. Okay. And then on top of that, you have this other connectivity matrix, which is maybe going like this. So you also have AI minus J, which is minus A, J minus I. This is equal to W, J minus I. This one is symmetric. And that one, if you basically speed, it's proportional to minus epsilon. Okay. It'd be hard to parse later on. Speed. So speed along attractor proportional to minus epsilon. Okay. So this is kind of nice, and it might be what the brain is doing. Certainly, you're capable of moving along line attractors without input, without any sort of external input that tells you where you are. There's only one problem here, and that is this is not exactly biologically plausible. So if you go back to this equation, so normally, so this AIJ matrix is, your connectivity matrix. The strength of your synapse is modulated by something else external. And in principle, the brain can do that. You can have, but it's not that easy. It's also not that easy to make it negative. So the negativity problem isn't too hard. You can just have two of these. But exactly how this is done is not clear. So while this solution is very elegant mathematically, and it's a reasonable guess for how things might be done, this sort of quadratic term in the weight matrix is not so plausible. So we sort of have two competing schemes. One of them is you input HI, this is external input now coming from somewhere else in the brain. This HI has to know where you are in the attractor. If you can do that, you can actually move along the attractor. On the other hand, if you want to be more elegant and just put in some epsilon, in some sense, the AIJ takes into account telling you where you are on the attractor, but then you're stuck with this quadratic nonlinearity in the weights. And so if either of these the brain uses is not known. Although I think recently in the fly, they figured this out. But this sort of general line attractor formalism, while very pretty, we don't really know to what extent the brain uses it. And if you want additional details, so there's all sorts of complicated linear algebra that goes in here, sort of complicated. So additional details. So line attractors. On the webpage. And there's nothing really particularly hard in there, but there's just a lot of there's sort of endless linear algebra that goes on for a long time, which is, I mean, reading algebra is never that fun, but if you're super interested, you can pretty much, it's far more than you ever wanted to know about line attractors. Okay, so we're gonna now switch gears a little bit. So let's sort of a brief summary what we've done. So we've looked at, so more recently we looked at point attractors. And sort of the main insight, which was made by somebody else, is Jij equals the sum on mu of squiggle I mu squiggle J mu 1 over. Okay, and basically we also had that squiggle I mu squiggle J mu. These things were approximately proportional delta mu. So these things are approximately uncorrelated. Remember, this is 1 if mu equals nu, and 0 if mu not equal to nu. Okay. So we had a bunch of patterns. These are approximately uncorrelated. Then we looked at line attractors. For which Jij equal Wi minus J. So we saw if that gave us, a single point attractor gave us n point attractors, would be called a line attractor without thinking too much. And we tried to make this go to the sum on mu of W mu I minus J. And we found that this kind of destroyed the line attractor. So it destroyed the line attractor. So line attractors are very structurally unstable. Start a line attractor and cause, if noise is, caused U equals 1 to P. So if P minus N, if P over N is much less than 1, drift along in the line attractor, cause basically, when I say destroy the line attractor, cause slow drift along the line attractor. Okay. So this is sort of a summary of sort of this point line attractor stuff. Okay. And remember, this analysis was sort of, again, this analysis here, or this conclusion here, came from analyzing the noise. In some sense, if you take away nothing from attractors, that's the most important thing. Sort of the signal noise type, dividing things into signal type noise and treating the noise as random input. You can actually do a lot with that. Okay, so this is, if you think about it, so okay, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit in a way. But the fact that the line attractors are so easy to destroy might make you kind of worry. How does the brain possibly, to give you some connectivity that produce the right connectivity? It's got to learn the connectivity, okay? So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about learning. We're going to come back to learning in a couple lectures, but for now, how might the brain learn a line attractor? Now, it turns out you can actually train a network. You can train it. You can train it, right? And in fact, if you build it to an RNN, which stands for recurrent neural network. Okay, so if you train a recurrent neural network, so you take it as the input, sort of hills of activity indicating position. So the input, input equals hill of activity. And the hills can be in different places, right? So, and basically what you really want to do is have the network. So if the goal of the network, so you train the network, to output, really simple task, output, so basically memorize the hill of activity. So output the hill of activity with a delay. And you actually include this, you basically plus noise. Okay, so the input to the network, basically, you can think of the input to the network as, so let's say what you really want, this is what you want. So the input of the network is going to correspond to, some point off the line attractor. You want in the network dynamics to actually go to this point and stay there, and at the end and spit it something out. And we know how to do that, right? But the question is, can we train a neural network to do that? The answer is yes. And what I want you to do in the next 10 minutes or so is give you some insight into why this works so well. Okay. And to do that, I'm going to consider, again, I'm going to consider, so the key is low rank connectivity. Okay. So I'm going to set Wij, I'm going to actually, so new, I can consider new I dot. So tau d new I dt equals phi of sum on j of jij new j minus new I. So a standard model, and let jij equal to 1 over n, the sum on mu. I mean, I can actually now consider, so I'm going to actually consider A I mu B J mu. Okay. So previously we had A equals B, right? A I mu equal B I mu, and we called it 8 I mu. Okay, but now for generality, I'll let this be different. Okay, and then both of these quantities, so A I mu and B I mu, so A I mu, B I mu, are order 1. And that means as n gets bigger and bigger, so basically we have n neurons in our network, as a number of neurons get bigger and bigger, the size of these don't change, they get smaller by this factor 1 over n. And we'll see that's important, okay? And now we can actually do exactly the same thing we did before. We're gonna let basically mu is equal to, so actually let's write down before we do that, let's write down this sum. So this is the sum j equals 1 to n of j. J is 1 over n. The sum on mu of a I mu b j mu j. And as usual, we're going to change the order. This is sum on mu. Let's say equals 1 to p. As usual, equals 1 to p of ai mu times 1 over n. The sum j equals 1 to n of b j mu nu j. And as usual, we're going to find this to be the overlap, mu. Okay? We do that. This is a sum mu equals 1 to p of ai mu mu. Okay? So our equation becomes tau d nu I dt equals phi of the sum on mu of ai mu mu minus nu I. Okay? Simpler looking. And now we can actually, what we can do is operate on both sides. So operate with, oops. Sum on 1 over n, sum on j of b j alpha. Okay? And when we do that, we get tau ddt of the 1 over n the sum on j of b j alpha, actually sum on I. Bi alpha nu I. And this, of course, is just equal to m alpha, right? Equals phi of the sum on mu, oops, equals 1 over n, sum on I, bi alpha, phi of sum on mu of a I mu mu minus 1 over n, sum on I of bi alpha nu I. And again, this is also m alpha. Okay, so this is just a time derivative of m alpha. This term stays the same except we do this sum, and this is m alpha again. And so when all is said and done, we get tau dm alpha dt equals 1 over n, the sum on j of b j, sum on I of bi alpha, phi of the sum on mu of a I mu and mu minus m alpha. Okay, let's make sure I got that right. Yes. Okay. So this is, so first of all, so we now have p equations instead of n equations, p equations. Okay. And in the previous thing, we looked at things noise analysis. So one thing that's, and when we do that, one thing that's sort of critical here, we have now B is not equal to A, different from A. These things better be correlated, right? If they're uncorrelated, this is going to average to 0. We're going to get nothing. Okay. So the B's and the A's need to be correlated. And it turns out for the reason that random matrices don't have have this property is because the B's and the A's are not correlated for random matrices. But that right now is not so important. So in the past, so what did we used to do to this? So basically, I'm going to put some brackets here. Old approach. We let phi of the sum on mu of AI mu mu equal phi of AI alpha m alpha plus the sum mu not equal to alpha AI mu mu, and then treat this as noise. Okay. So that works great for some of the problems we're thinking about for embedding memories and understanding some of these networks. But what we're going to do now in the last very little time, we're not going to do that. But what we're going to notice is this thing is a 2-layer network. Okay. So the input to that network is so the input network is mu. So there are P nodes because they're PMs. And then there's each of these MUs is so this is the A matrix, or the A matrix. This is AI mu. So now in this layer, there are N nodes. Okay. And then the B matrix takes this back down. So in here, there are now P nodes. Okay. And the output of this is phi, right? And that equals tau dma alpha dt obviously plus m alpha. Okay. So if n is large, this is a universal approximator. Okay. So you can basically approximate any function in the world you want. And in fact, usually there are a handful of sort of things you care about in the world, latent variables, we call them. And so this is nice. So P is typically small. So P is typically small. Okay. So this low rank structure, if you have low rank structure, we'll talk about next time a little bit about when you do and don't have that. If you can train this network to have low rank structure, it can give you any dynamics you want. Okay. And it's, I mean, deep recurrent neural networks are a little hard to understand, but if you think of them as feed forward networks giving you some dynamics, they become much easier. Okay. So the bottom line is low rank recurrent networks are recurrent equivalent to feed forward networks, and feed forward networks we understand much better. Okay, I'm going to end there. I'm very sorry about the upset with my pen, but put this online as usual, and I will see you guys all next week. I'll stay around for a little longer if you have any questions.
Any question? No. Professor?
You can see on my photos.
Professor?
Was there a
Excuse me?
question? Yep.
No question about the lecture. I just wonder when will you respond to my last email?
Oh, yeah, look at I got all sorts of
Yeah.
deadlines, but soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, not before too long. Yeah, sorry, I've been saying number of deadlines.
Too busy. Okay.
Yeah, and then I'll be gone. Hopefully,
Okay.
if I don't get to next week, I'll be gone for a week. So it'll be the week after that.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So the class we can stop here.
Yeah, I'll stop here. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Hold on.